Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta says they can use what they've been through already this season to cope without Kai Havertz. The German forward will miss the rest of the campaign with a hamstring injury picked up during their warm weather training camp in Dubai. Here's what the Gunners boss had to say about it a bit earlier.
Yeah, so we were having a great camp in Dubai, recharging, training, having some time off and connecting again with nature and a different environment, and then the injury happened in a very unexpected way, certainly. So it's a big blow, obviously, because of the injuries that we have. But fortunately, we've been through a lot this season. We have played without Gary Magalhaes, without Saliba, without Ben White all season, Tomiyasu all season, Calafiori 2 months, Merino 2 months, Martin Odegaard 2 months, Bukayo Saka 3 months, Gabriel Jesus, all of them. So that's it. That's the challenge ahead. Love it and look forward, because we are still where we are with all the things that I mentioned, on top of playing 4 times with 10 men, blah, blah, blah. So let's see what the team is made of.
Mikel Arteta there speaking ahead of the game against Leicester City this weekend. Now, I loved that press conference.
Yeah.
Like, I came out of it feeling in a really good mood. And when you think about where Arsenal have been over the last few weeks, the exit from the Carabao Cup, not many games going on. They had a weekend off because of their FA Cup exit, which meant that, okay, people got a break and stuff, but actually people were just sitting there mulling over all the problems that they feel exist at the moment. But then I went into the press conference this morning and I came out feeling upbeat, and as though actually, regardless of the issues and regardless of the difficulties that Arsenal face, they're at the very least up for this fight. And that made me feel good. Is that Mikel Arteta just being a really good communicator, or is there still reason for Arsenal fans, in your view, to be buoyant and optimistic?
He deserves a pay rise for making fans feel good after your transfer window, because it was an abomination. Everybody knew what Arsenal needed going into the transfer window, and you left it with nothing. And I think the only team that was really in win now mode in the beginning of the season was Arsenal. Liverpool didn't really expect to challenge for a title in the first year post Jurgen Klopp. And Man City, yeah, they want to win the 5th in a row, but if they didn't, it's not a disaster. They've won so much. The only top team that really said, yeah, this is our year to win a title was Arsenal. Your summer transfer window was abysmal. You brought in a very good-looking defender that has been injured a lot this season in Calafiori. You brought in the wrong Sociedad midfielder, and you brought in Raheem Sterling, who I love, but by all accounts is not the same player that he was at Manchester City. And so you think, okay, cool, that's the case. But we're still within touching distance of Liverpool going into January. We make a few signings and I reckon we'll be up for the fight. You went on an incredible run last season at the back end of it to really push City all the way, and so you could do that again, bringing in reinforcements. What did you do in the January transfer window? Diddly squat. And now Arteta has to go out there in front of the press and spin it as if you're in a good place. He's done a very good job this season, considering you had a lot of injuries. But Arsenal's goal was clear at the beginning of the season. It was to win the Premier League, and it looks like you're not going to do that. We're still within touch of distance of Liverpool. Them dropping points against Everton is a good thing for you lot, but you have to carry on winning games. But I think that he will know, as a manager that's very well versed in terms of trying to challenge for his Premier League title, that the squad's just not deep enough to push Liverpool all the way.
That's all fair, okay? That's all fair, apart from one bit.
Go on.
The idea that he's spinning it to try and cover for what was a bad window, I don't necessarily subscribe to that, because I think Mikel Arteta was very, very clear throughout January that he needed an attacker. He didn't shy away from it. When the window closed and he was questioned about that, there was... look, I don't want to say that he was critical of the club, because he definitely wasn't, at least not publicly. But if you read between the lines in what he was saying essentially that we failed. He said, look, we probably did our homework and we did all our bits and pieces behind the scenes, but we couldn't find the right player. That is his way of saying we failed, right? That's his way of saying that. And so now I just think he's in a position where, can he afford to sit around feeling sorry for himself? Can he afford that mindset to seep into the players of, well, the season's done? He can't. They've got so much to play for still. They are in the title race, whether people want to accept it or not. They are still in the hunt for the Champions League as well. They qualified as, the 3rd best team, which was pretty good. They're in a good position and they've still got a lot to fight for. So I just feel like Mikel Arteta has got to try and lift the mood. He's got to draw a line under what happened in January. I think the fans have got to do that as well. There's no point crying over the spilt milk. It's done now. Forget about it. Draw a line under it, move on, and let's go out there and try and win these games and try and keep ourselves in contention. And I think if that message isn't coming from the manager, who the hell is it going to come from?
No, and he's done a very, very good job. I just think that we can try and absolve Mikel Arteta from responsibility in terms of the business done, but we were led to believe that he was very involved in the process in the summer.
Yeah, and that's right.
And so in the summer, I think that it was his call to not go full throttle for a striker.
Why do you think that, though?
Because you would have gone full throttle for a striker. He was very vocal about how you needed a striker in January, and I get it, you had injuries, but you needed a striker in the summer, and Arsenal fans understood that. That's why the links were there with Sesko. And you didn't go and get a striker. You went and got a centre-back, probably the position that you're probably the most stocked in terms of quality in that position. Went and got the wrong midfielder, and you went and got a winger that you got on deadline day on a loan from Chelsea that's clearly just not good enough or at the level anymore. I think Arteta was very involved in the process of trying to get a striker, and I think he thought he was happy with what he had. I think he thought that Kai Havertz could do a job, and he was doing a job up until he got injured. But I do think that Arteta is somewhat culpable for the fact that he didn't go full throttle for a striker in the summer. But you might know more than me.
It's not that I know anything. It's that I just find it hard to believe that this guy who's been so driven and who's taken this team from A to B quite quickly when you consider where they were, I just think the idea that he doesn't want the best or that he's put the brakes on the project, it just doesn't make sense to me. I think there's things that have gone on in the background. Edu's departed, which I think has to have had some impact on their ability to go and get business done in January. I'm not saying because of that they couldn't. It's not an excuse or a get out. But, you know, maybe things that were in the pipeline under Edu were all of a sudden not anymore. Maybe players that were willing to come and sign for Edu were maybe not anymore. I don't know. But I just think that from Mikel Arteta's point of view, if he was told in the summer, look, the guy that you want is not available. If you go and buy someone else now, we're not going to give you the guy that you want in 12 months' time because that money would have been spent. I think he probably would have looked at it and gone, I've got Havertz, I've got Jesus. If you look back over the last couple of seasons, Odegaard's contributed a lot of goals. Rice got a record amount of Premier League goals last season for his own standards. And then you've got a whole host of players that can contribute and chip in. He didn't know that he was going to lose Saka, that he was going to lose Odegaard for 2 months, that he was going to lose Martinelli now, that he was going to lose Havertz for the rest of the season.
But Harry, there's been multiple transfer windows, and Arsenal have done brilliantly in terms of signing defenders or defensive players. I don't think there's a better team in the Premier League in terms of bringing in defensive players. Arsenal, the way you brought in David Raya was masterful. Again, I was taking the mick out of Calafiori, but that's a good signing that a lot of teams in Europe wanted. Declan Rice ostensibly was bought as a defensive midfielder. He can do a lot more than that. But for the last 2, 3, 4 transfer windows, there's been no kind of progress to your offensive line. He brought in, let's not get twisted, he brought in Kai Havertz as a number 8. That was not necessarily a striker. So in terms of that front three, Arsenal haven't done business in that area for a long, significant business.
I agree with that, and I think it's an area that has been overlooked. I think it's been an oversight. Okay, I don't disagree with that for a second. Where I have a problem, and this is not with you, this is with the general narrative, is that people want to pin it on Mikel Arteta. And I don't think you can pin it on any one individual.
Okay.
Arsenal being in this boat that they're in right now, it's a collective failure. It's on everybody. Maybe it is on Mikel Arteta to a degree because maybe there were options out there that he didn't fancy. I don't know. But it's on the sporting director as well. It's on the people in control of the purse strings, because if the budget was unlimited or at least much bigger, then you think less, don't you, about going out and making these big money signings. So I think the club have got to a point where, you know, under KSE, it was when they took full ownership, it was right, re-establish ourselves as a big force again. And we spent loads of money over the course of 3 or 4 seasons. We get to that point now where we're title challengers and an established Champions League club. Now the question is, do you want to go and spend that extra bit of money that Man City have done 1,000,001 times over to get themselves into that position of dominance, or do you not? And ultimately, we have got to the point where we now need that last bit of investment. But what you saw last summer was things start to change and reverse. You mentioned Calafiori, you mentioned Mourinho. Think about the players that have gone out the door. And actually, what Arsenal did last summer was a lot more like a kind of break-even kind of window than the type of aggressive window that we'd seen in the years gone by. So that's why there's frustration towards the club. And I think that is more of an issue than Mikel Arteta and his wants.
Yeah.
So I'm really like, I feel like for a long, long time, and I know the two situations aren't completely comparable, but I felt like for a long, long time, we went after Arsene Wenger for things that were out of his hands. And Arsene Wenger was a great shield, and he protected them because he was incredibly loyal. And I'm giving Mikel Arteta a bit of a free pass here because I'm worried about that happening to him.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be seen as the guy that just said yes and did everything. I don't want that for him.
I think maybe maybe I'm being harsh here because for 2-3 seasons, Arsenal's summer transfer business was impeccable. Like, if you think about 2 years ago, or 2 seasons ago, where you brought in Declan Rice and you brought in David Raya, like, that's an incredible transfer win. That changes the face of a football club. One of the best goalkeepers, not just in the country, in the world. One of the best centre midfielders, not just in the country, in the world. You think about a couple of years ago where you bring in the likes of Ben White and players that have gone on to establish themselves in this Arsenal starting 11. But this was the first transfer window, summer transfer window, because January, you just do that business if it's there and if you need to improve on the squad because of injuries. But it's the first summer transfer window where I was like, Arsenal have gone not backwards or they're stagnated. And this is when you've been on the precipice, on the brink. You challenged 2 years in a row. And maybe you are a year ahead of schedule. Maybe the first year you challenged, nobody expected it. And then they went, oh, we're there. Let's bring in a Declan Rice. And that was aggressive. And we saw Arsenal be very aggressive in their pursuit of trying to win the Premier League title. But I just feel like there's been a lack of aggression recently that I haven't liked. The bid for Ollie Watkins was just like, we all knew that wasn't going to be accepted. What was that? What foreplanning was there? I understand you had injuries. You have to kind of work on the fly. But for Arsenal, I just want to see a bit more. I want to see a bit more aggression. And you find yourself in the position right now with Kai Havertz, who's out for the season. You're relying on now Ethan Nwaneri to play significant minutes as a 17-year-old. And we've seen already that Arteta's unwilling or he's reticent to throw him in there. He's still a kid. He's still developing. So I feel like you could have been in a better position if you had a better summer.
I agree with that. I agree with that. For what it's worth, I agree that there have been mistakes made that go back as far as the summer. I just think, to quickly summarise, I just think it's a very dangerous road to go down, pinning it on the manager when actually he was the only person that was coming out and saying, we need. Like, he was saying we need.
Yeah.
And my worry in the long term is that, do we get to a point where these... And I don't know that it's a disagreement, but do we get to the point where he's starting to question the ambition? Or Declan Rice is starting to question the ambition? That's
what
my
I was
worry.
That was what I was going to ask you. Can I just really quickly throw that to you? In terms of these players, got some incredible young players that could walk into a lot of teams in the world. Declan Rice, Saliba, even Gabriel. You've got so many. Saka. When does it get to the point if Arsenal don't win the league or the Champions League this season? I think if you do, all bets are off. These players sign new contracts and they stay at the football club for a long time. But if you don't win those trophies this season, when does it get to a stage where these players maybe start to look elsewhere if they want to win the biggest trophies in their career and fill up their trophy cabinet?
I think it happens within the next couple of seasons.
Okay.
And that's my big concern. And that's why I feel like when you get this far, you have to make sure you double down and you finish the job off, even if it costs you a bit more than you wanted it to. I think you have to find a way. I think you have to get creative. So I don't want to pin it on the manager. I don't necessarily want to say that the club lack ambition or anything like that either, because I don't think it's that black and white. I think it's a collective failure, Arsenal's failure to bring someone in, and I think they're now paying the price for it. But Mikel Arteta has to, as a manager now in this situation, try and be positive, try and rally the troops, try and get everyone on side, and try and make something of what remains of the season. He can't just lay his tools down and die. That wouldn't be acceptable.